Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome everyone to today's webinar with Jada Doye McKenna. We're so thrilled to have you. We're gonna wait a few minutes, just let folks join us here this morning. I'll run through a couple of housekeeping points a few times. Thanks for your patience. One is we are recording this webinar this morning. For donor privacy, you won't see your faces, we won't be recording the chat and so on, but you will be able to ask questions. So please do feel free to go ahead and put your questions for Jada in the chat and we'll get to them through the course of the webinar. Again, just giving a couple of minutes for folks to join. We're so thrilled to have you all here this morning. So sorry we can't be doing this in person, but it is great through this miracle of technology to be able to Zoom with you all today. Looking forward to the days when we can meet in person again soon. All right, it looks like we are just about at capacity. Thank you everyone for joining us. So my name is Christy Delafield. I'm the Managing Director of Communications here at Mercy Corps. Thank you so much to all of you. I know many of you, it's really exciting to have you here for what promises to be just a fantastic discussion with Mercy Corps CEO, Jada Doye McKenna. I'll remind you that we're recording today's session, and to protect donor privacy, your names or pictures will not appear in that video, but just for your awareness. Many of you on the call today are some of our most generous supporters, and it's thanks to you that Mercy Corps was able to reach more than 37 million people last year, even in the midst of a global pandemic. So I just can't thank you enough. As you know, Mercy Corps is a global team of about 5,600 humanitarians around the world committed to creating a future where everyone can prosper. We work in more than 40 countries. The places where Mercy Corps works are among the most fragile and some of the most hard to reach for humanitarians. Thinking of spaces like Yemen and Northeast Nigeria, where communities are living through active conflict, and we're working to serve them and to support them as they work hard to meet their own development needs. So it's really thrilling to be here and introduce to you the leader of this fantastic mission, Jada Doye McKenna. Jada joined Mercy Corps this past October. She is a graduate of Harvard University, grad and undergrad. Jada has held roles at McKinsey & Company, American Express, and GE. And I'll share with you that she is very well known within the humanitarian aid sector, not just for her remarkable business acumen, but also just deeply known for her programmatic expertise. She's spent more than a decade working to end world hunger at roles with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with the Obama administration. Jada was the Chief Operating Officer for Habitat for Humanity, and most recently the COO for CARE, one of Mercy Corps' largest peer organizations, where she oversaw the organization's programming and global operations. Jada joins us today from Atlanta, where she lives with her husband and 2 sons. Thank you so much for joining us, Jada.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Jada, I was really considering where do we start, because you have such a remarkable career. You have just a phenomenal wealth of experience, and I cannot overstate the electricity that ran through the staff when your name was announced as the new CEO. People were so excited. They were like, we got her. that. But I think that it would be great to start with the thing that you and this wonderful group of supporters have in common, which is this deep passion for our shared humanitarian mission. Obviously, you have a lot of business expertise, really strong career in that area, but you were really drawn to humanitarian and development work. And I'd love to start there. Will you talk to us a little bit about what got you engaged in this space?
Yes, I like to say that this was very accidental, but after college, I did some volunteer work in Southern Africa, and I had the opportunity to travel in some remote areas of Malawi. And I remember that I went into an area, we're talking to a group of women, and I saw a woman who looked to be my age, perhaps even younger, and she had a baby that was trying to nurse. And the thing that struck me was the baby like kept patting her breast, and her breast looked very shriveled. And at that moment, I realized I was looking at malnutrition or hunger. Malawi had just suffered a long drought. This was a very poor community, and that woman and her child really haunted me. And so, as I began my professional career, like I wanted to be the CEO of a big corporation or something. I was really, I like kind of liked running things, and I really was excited about that. But I just kept looking for opportunities where I could use those skills or do something within companies to really address situations like this. And then an opportunity did arise to go to the Gates Foundation to help them launch their agriculture and hunger work because of a previous job I'd had at an agribusiness. So I took a 50% pay cut and moved across the country to Seattle. I was very single. I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to get married. Like this is, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anyone there. But it was, and I think at that time I still thought I may go back to private sector. But to have that much meaning in your life and to get to do it day in and day out, there was no way I was looking back after that.
And that's really a strong thread for Mercy Corps, this connection between business and understanding kind of what works in
Mhm.
systems to support people through those economic systems.
Yes, yeah.
Have
In
you
fact, when I was in the US government, I felt like a lot of my job was to be a translator between business and development professionals. I'm like, profit's not bad, it's good. Without profit, we don't get just these other things that we want. So yeah.
and can you talk a little bit about your just these remarkable institutions that you've worked with, about a little bit about your education and career path?
Yeah, no, yes. So I went to Harvard undergrad, as you mentioned, and I did what a lot of Harvard undergrads do out of college. I accepted a job at McKinsey and Company as my first job out of college to do management consulting, to see a wide variety of things. I then went to work for one of my clients. I was in the Chicago office of McKinsey, and I had a large agribusiness client, and I went to go work there before business school. And I realized that I really did like the operating side of companies. And after business school, I pursued that in the financial services sector. And during that time, I did feel like I was missing something. I was missing some of that fulfillment. And the Gates Foundation, I heard an NPR story about the Gates Foundation starting an agriculture program. I knew that I knew that work, and it just all fell in place after that. And from then, I really, when I came into this sector, I was not aware of career paths. I had never thought about foreign service or USA. I didn't know what people did. And I just took a blind leap of faith and figured out that, and thought, I'll figure something out. And it just has worked out that I am able to combine like my love of operations and running things with my love and passion for this work. And I'm just thrilled that I kind of followed my heart and took a big risk, and that it's worked out.
Well, you are highly respected in the field and just have had tremendous amount of success doing it.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
it I gotta ask, so this kind of brings us current, right?
Mhm.
You're working in the sector, spent more than a decade working in various institutions of development and aid. You were working at CARE. It was the middle of a global pandemic, your chief operating officer, and this position came available at Mercy Corps. You gotta tell me, what were your impressions of Mercy Corps? What did you know about Mercy Corps, and what drew you to this role?
Yeah, Mercy Corps is it's one of the great organizations in our sector. You know, it stands out. We all follow what Mercy Corps is doing, and I've also known that, you know, Mercy Corps shines. It prides itself on innovation. It has shined. I'd always look up and see these unlikely partnerships, like Mercy Corps is working for NASA. Why can't we work with NASA? You know, and so it's just always jealous of that. And I also felt like Mercy Corps was an organization that could always figure out how to get to yes, where I saw other organizations stumble. And I think it's just an openness to different actors and different approaches, like working with Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, or, you know, I think Mercy Corps is not afraid of experimentation. And so knowing that it was a great organization, I did think hard about it because I was kind of in line to get this role at CARE in a few years. And I said, I let me meet a few people, let me meet the board and understand what's going on. And after that first meeting, I was like, I really want this job. I'd really like to work at this organization and lead this organization.
That's really nice to hear. We're thrilled to have you. So you took this leap of faith, you decided to change jobs. What was it like to take the helm of this organization in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of COVID? I mean, this was October 2020 was your first day. So we're talking about
October
throughout the
2020 was my first day. You know, it's interesting because as I was applying during the pandemic, my first conversation, my kids were like being homeschooled, you know, in the first couple weeks of that, and our house was a disaster. I have always followed a personal philosophy of servant leadership and just thinking, like, if I go where I think I could be useful and am needed the most, like, I'll try to do my best and see what happens. And so in that vein, you know, when the timing of it all came up, it was like, the world needs us the most right now, right? Everyone's suffering, people are stuck. And so I felt like I had to pursue it, and I had to do it. And I wanted to do it, right? I think Mercy Corps is a great organization. And I was like, what better opportunity is this to serve? And it's been interesting. In a role like this, I would normally be traveling and on the road for the first, year all the time. And now I couldn't travel. And, I haven't even been able to go out to Portland or our DC office yet. But I'll tell you, I've been remarkably pleased with how easy and some of the benefits of onboarding remotely. It's very democratizing. I actually met with our team in Nepal before I met with the Portland-based finance team, right? This morning, I spent time with our team in Iraq. Last week, we did a virtual country visit with our team in Colombia. And those are things that, those are conversations that would have waited until I had a chance to visit the region, right? So there'd be like a staggering of me really getting to know people and talking to their work, because we get to the region and do this and maybe do some of these calls, whereas now I'm really able to see a great cross section and interact with a lot of people. And while I'm looking forward to the face-to-face, I've actually feel like I've been able to do more because I haven't had to build in that travel time or those disruptions. And it's been really fruitful, and people are more engaged now more than ever. And it's also just being able to be in an organization when people are at their most stressed in terms of wanting to serve and dealing with their personal issues as well. Trying to provide some calm and sanity in the midst of that is really a privilege.
And what kinds of questions are you asking? What are you finding as you get to know these teams? What's standing out for you?
Yeah, the one question I love to ask everybody, especially because I'm not touching and feeling and walking around in the work, is what is unique about Mercy Corps? Like, what's the thing that you feel like I need to know about what makes Mercy Corps great? And in all of our organizations, all of our peer organizations, we all have people who are really committed to the mission and to service. I have to say, Mercy Corps feels like fresher and younger. And one thing I have never, ever come across someone who's had any hint of cynicism or being jaded after doing this work for so long. And I can't say that of any of our peer organizations, especially organizations like ours that are deep on the humanitarian side and have seen have seen situations where humans are at their worst, it's very common to have experienced people be a little jaded or cynical, or tell offhand jokes or off color remarks. And I have never heard that at Mercy Corps. And in fact, I've been really blown away about how Mercy Corps is so willing to jump into new practice areas even. So right now we are building and building out a portfolio around youth employment and youth engagement. And a lot of other INGOs know this is the future, but it's not the thing they've been doing for so many years, and they're more tentative. And so there's just a boldness and a passion and a commitment and a sincere belief in what we can do that I feel has just been striking at Mercy Corps. And I'm coming from a place of being in the sector and a place of optimism, but I still am just blown away by what I see at Mercy Corps.
And you come from a deep programmatic and operations background. What have you been seeing in the programs? And can you talk a little bit about what Mercy Corps is doing to respond to COVID, what Mercy Corps is doing in the world, and what are you seeing from your perspective with that background?
Yeah, it's fun. In some of these conversations, especially I did spend a lot of time in food security and hunger. And I could tell sometimes the teams are really surprised when I ask very detailed questions. And I do that because I want to see where Mercy Corps is in the maturity of its programming and how much we're thinking about gender and how much we're doing monitoring and evaluation. And I've always been super impressed. And in fact, I've learned a lot from the team because Mercy Corps is much more advanced when it comes to using digital tools and technology and introducing those. So I've been really blown away. Mercy Corps, so we developed a COVID resilience fund right away. Many of you supported that, and we are so grateful. So once we made sure our staff were safe and kind of retooled to figure out how we could do our programming in safer ways, how we distance the things that we could do that are contactless, we've been able to do amazing things. So one, we added a lot of water sanitation and hygiene work in the communities that we served, made sure they had places to do that. So we've set up hand washing stations in countries ranging from Timor-Leste to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We re-geared all of our programming. So in terms of food distribution, we spaced it apart. Where we do cash giving to people, we figured out contactless ways to do it. We have been really great about spreading COVID information and stopping misinformation. In Northeast Nigeria and Haiti, we've been tracking social media and tracking misinformation and false things that are said, and using our own digital tools to go out to people with the truth, so that we can kind of prevent it, kind of help with more social cohesion in those communities. We've also been able to provide PPE like face shields for local hospitals in Tunisia for frontline workers, and helping migrants, people in the move, like in Colombia, which I mentioned I spent time with last week. We are working with Venezuelan refugees, and a lot of them are on the move in the midst of this and then suffering in the middle of Colombia took a very severe lockdown. And so we were serving those migrants, helping them with places to stay and information through that lockdown to keep them safe. We've also, one thing that I love about Mercy Corps is our commitment to sustainable economic development and recovery, and our strength in working within markets. And so we also really double down on support to small businesses and micro enterprises, because people turn to their local markets when in a time of crisis. And so we double down and we're able to give small enterprise loans to people, able to provide advice to people through their micro mentor platform to really keep small business and entrepreneurs running. And in fact, we've expanded that work in the US as well. So
that's really exciting. Thank you. And I'll just take a minute to invite and remind guests, please feel free to share some questions. I'm going to ask Jada a few more questions, and then we're going to turn to your questions. So please go ahead and put those in the chat, and we will get to them in just a minute. So Jada, many of us, and myself included, I know you have been really heartened to see our friends, our family, and our neighbors start to receive vaccines.
yeah.
And some of us have had the opportunity and been fortunate enough to be able to get vaccinated ourselves. But the same cannot be said for so many people around the world, including many of Mercy Corps team members. Could you just talk a little bit about, I've heard you speak about vaccine equity. Could you talk about what do you mean by that? Why is it so important? And what do we need to be thinking about to get that done?
This crisis has been humbling, right? Because it's one that's affected all of us, right? We're not running out to help someone over there. We're all in the middle of it. And I hope that what it's taught the people from Europe and America is that we're not safe until all of us are safe, right? This is a viral, this is a virus, and we need vaccines everywhere. I'm really applaud, I applaud the countries that have stepped up to support the COVAX facility, which for those of you who don't know, it's the Global Vaccine Alliance that is procuring vaccine supply for lower income countries. But even their goal only gets to 20% of the needs in those countries. And that the money is for the vaccines and not the distribution of the vaccines. And when you work in places like where Mercy Corps works, so what about people in Syria who lived in areas that are not controlled by the government? How are they going to get to vaccines? Or what about the money that people need to distribute it to the super hard to serve populations? Like what we've had here in the US, where we kind of had to, we tried one way and then we had to set up arenas to get to other people. There's the funding to do that is not there. So we have really focused on getting that message to governments around, to donor governments about the increasing availability of supply, increasing availability of funds, but also to make sure that we maintain our core funding in these spaces. Because of the ripple effects of COVID, you see more hunger, you see more displaced people, you see more conflict. So you have to get to all that so that people can get vaccinated as well and withstand the disease. But getting the vaccine everywhere is a major effort. And we've also focused a lot on trying to build trust and fight misinformation in the places that we serve, and working with our local communities to accelerate vaccine acceptance once it becomes available, and advocating within countries. Everywhere has had an issue with equitable vaccine distribution. Even the state of Oregon, we worked with Governor Kate Brown on a strike force that she set up to make sure that ethnic communities and other underserved communities in Oregon were getting the vaccine. So we're working with governments where we work too, to make sure that the people that we serve in these countries do not get left behind. But the worst case scenario that we're looking at, if we continue in current trends, is that some of the countries, there's an estimate that up to 85 of the lowest income countries in the world could possibly not see the vaccine until 2023. And we've got to reverse that trend. We've got to stop that and make sure they get there earlier.
And Jada, it's so important too, because we're already seeing mutations of the virus. We're already seeing variants. I know that you must be hearing from team members that they're anxious to get vaccinated. Can you talk a little bit about what happens between now and 2023 in countries where Mercy Corps works, while people are waiting for the vaccine? Like what happens to these trends that you're seeing?
It's disturbing. I think what people, the thing that's most upsetting is we were making a lot of progress against poverty prior to COVID. And because of COVID and its ripple effects, we have raced about a decade of progress with some people. The World Food Program estimates that 272 million people are food insecure right now. That's an 82% spike from the same year before COVID. So just hunger. A lot of people rely on the informal economy to work, right? They walk to their local market and they sell goods. All those things have gone away. Even if within our own staff, in countries where we work, we have people who work in our offices doing jobs like providing tea to people and helping people get around. And so we've set up funds and support for those people so that they're not destitute. We also see the impacts of women and girls on this. The girls are more likely to be pulled out of school. They're more likely to be caring for the caregiver for people in in the household, there are increases in domestic violence. So if you can, see in all of our contexts, we're seeing these things, but think about how much worse it is for people who don't have the safety nets that we may have and who may not be as resilient economically. So we see, our work is more important now than it's ever been before, right? We are doubling down. We're trying to make vaccines available to our team, not at the expense of the local populations, but we are kind of subsidizing the costs in countries where insurance doesn't cover it. We're really putting our duty of care there and continuing to refine ways that we can continue to serve as many people as possible while still threatened by this outbreak. But we're really doubling down on our core work because we're just seeing demands that we've just never seen before.
Well, that's a really excellent kind of pivot point. I'm seeing a number of questions come through from our audience around your vision for the future. I mean, here you are taking on this role as the CEO at a real inflection point for Mercy Corps and a real critical moment in history. Can you talk a little bit about where you want to take this organization? What's your vision for the future?
Yeah, I said in the beginning that Mercy Corps is one of the great organizations in our space. And I intend to make it like the greatest and to kind of take it to that next level and to continue to figure out ways that we can not just accelerate, but kind of in multiples, really amplify our impact in the world and bringing new technologies and things to bear. Like we're needed now more than ever. So it really is a time for us to scale and go deeper where we're going to erase these trends in extreme poverty. We're also looking at a long road from recovery to recovery from COVID, which is, like I said, it's amplified hunger and poverty, but it's also amplified the risk of conflict. And so our social cohesion and peace work is more important now than ever. And climate change is also a compounding factor in this as something that has a devastating effect that impacts people's livelihoods and is another threat in terms of social cohesion and another cause for migration. So we are really looking ahead to refining our programming in climate change. We already do a lot with agriculture. We do work with energy. So expanding that work, doubling down on our innovations portfolio, and also making sure that we're fit for purpose in terms of our work. Mercy Corps has grown really quickly, and I think we will continue to grow quickly. And so there are some internal investments we likely need to make too in our staff and in some of our infrastructure to make sure that we are still that we can still serve that very well. So the future is bright. Mercy Corps shines in places where things are the hardest. We go to a lot of places that other organizations don't go, and I think you will see that the world take us up on that more than ever going forward.
I'm really liking this follow-up question. I'm going to read to you. I think it's maybe a fellow ops person, a monitoring evaluation lover. How are you defining and measuring success? Do you have some short-term objectives, some long-term objectives, and how are you tracking that measurement of success?
So I'm going to let you in on a secret in that I have the best CEO job in our sector, and I'll tell you why. Most boards of directors of organizations like ours are with people, are usually a lot of business people, and the standard way that their CEOs are measured are on growth. And so some of my peers, when I said, what are you measured on and how, they're like fundraising, growth. The Mercy Corps board, and this is why after the first meeting I wanted this job, the Mercy Corps board was like, we're focused on impact and explicitly says growth just for the sake of growth isn't necessarily the answer, right? Are we going to where we're needed the most? Are we doing what we do best? Like what are the ways that we leverage our strengths to maximize our impact in the world? And so that is how I will measure success. There's a process that we need to take in going through our teams and going through our work to say, what is that really look like? What are the metrics for our different programs? What are the countries or types of places we really want to be in and be in everywhere? And what are the specific things we want to achieve in that? And we are doing kind of a global strategy refresh right now. We're just undertaking that to answer those questions, because we have grown very fast, and we have a very entrepreneurial culture. So we do a lot of things. And I think now, like, we're really looking at where we want to intentionally invest more and get deeper. And so that impact is my North Star, and our North Star as an organization.
So I'm seeing a couple of questions about sort of change management. Do you have changes in mind that you want to make? Sometimes change comes slowly. How are you, reflecting on that? Could you talk a little bit about
So as an
how you see?
organization,
Yeah.
there are a couple of things. As an organization, we're doing a joint strategy. We're doing a strategy to kind of further define, like, what do we want to see for ourselves in 10 years? And I also setting up resources and mechanisms for that change to come into place, because change management is difficult. It does require training and time and the proper sequencing. So if anyone in the audience is an expert in change management or has resource ideas for us, please let me know, because I have been talking to some change management specialists and thinking about where to put different change management resources as we come out of that piece. The other thing that was started before I came, and that we are continuing to really enhance is our efforts around compliance and protection, like prevention of sexual harassment and sexual abuse, creating a very safe workplace for our participants and our employees. So we're continuing to do that to make sure that our growth is that we're keeping up with all of that as we grow quickly. And then the final thing is another position that joined the same day I did was we established an office of a chief ethics and compliance officer. When you're a small organization and growing, you can assume that everyone's always doing the right thing. As we get bigger, as my colleague Steve and I are talking a lot about that culture of integrity, and we're also doing just things like employee surveys and others that you may forget to do as you're growing really quickly, but that help us keep our pulse on the culture and help teams work together to talk to each other, to make sure that we're all communicating, making it the best workplace for the team it can be, while also going through change and really getting a good mirror on ourselves and where we are and where we're going.
And Jada, one of the biggest challenges it seems we face as a sector today is around issues of inequity, and whether that is the balance of serving participants, the balance of different types of staff. A lot of this comes from this sort of legacy of colonialism or white saviorism that's in our work. And I'm seeing a question asking how you're reflecting on that, what Mercy Corps is doing to address these kinds of inequities in our sector overall, and what your vision is there.
Yeah, Mercy Corps' core vision is we talk about building a just world where everyone can prosper, and you can't build a just world without being inclusive, and certainly looking at our legacy of colonialism and Western saviorism is part of that. People are looking to control their own destinies. People are looking to be in charge. They're not looking for that savior. And the murder of George Floyd, I think, really changed. The sector was already coming to grips with that, but I think it changed the sector, it changed the world, and it changed people's expectations of us and how we show up. So I'm really proud, I think it's one of the leading class ones. We have a gender equity, diversity, and social inclusion strategy that looks at not only our organization and changes that we need to urgently make to diversify, and also to make sure that we are treating people equitably within our organization. We also do that within our programming, right? So part of our work is to make sure that we're including the people that are the most marginalized. I spent last week in Colombia with my virtual visit to Colombia. I spent some time with Venezuelan refugees who are part of the LGBTQ community. community at a facility where a home where they get support and economic support, and we're helping them with micro enterprises and other training. So like what, you know, our goal is to do that. And so with each of our teams, we're doing that. I'm like, who are you serving? How many women are you serving? What are the ethnically marginalized groups here? Who are you serving? So keeping that focus on social inclusion in our work is quite important. And then with our team, diversifying our leadership to more reflect the places that we serve, cultivating local leaders to be country directors and regional directors. You know, we're a global organization, and we need to look like that. And an increasing amount, it's the right thing to do. And it's also something that's just being demanded. And we will make that shift along with everyone else.
Can you talk a little bit, Jada, about trends that you were seeing in the philanthropic landscape over the next decade, say? What are you seeing, and what do you think is going to change in this space?
You know, there are a couple of things that are encouraging that I'm really excited about. So, and I think Mercy Corps is really well positioned to lead. We have I think you see there are a lot of like innovators and entrepreneurs, particularly with our West Coast roots. You know, we're at the center of that, and I think there are a lot of people with large private foundations or large personal things that are really interested in co-creation or interested in how something works. And one of our strengths has always been that research and on researching and like really seeing what works to help people come up with unintended consequences, or to say, these are the ways that we deploy this, or these are the ways these can serve these populations. So I think that's going to be a trend around people wanting to do specific innovations. I think donors, we see in US foundations, especially, people are increasingly asking about the diversity of our board and staff. Individual donors are increasingly, they want to see the impact numbers just like everyone else. So we're working at that. And people are also looking at like alternative ways to raise funds. So we have a social ventures fund. We're seeing some pay-per-performance come out from some institutional donors. So there are a lot of trends. The other thing that's refreshing, just as an NGO organization, is I think a lot of people are realizing that organizations like ours also need just core funds, like so funds that aren't allocated to like a specific crisis or a specific type of programming to do well. Like those core funds cover like us advancing our monitoring and evaluation. They cover our compliance efforts. They cover our ability to like check program quality and do things like that. And it has been, and our ability to even do our own like change management initiatives, like I talked about earlier, to become more efficient and effective now that we know what to do. And I'm really happy, and I think there's more of a trend of donors understanding that and just trying to develop deeper relationships with organizations, and I really welcome all of it.
Yeah, as someone who's worked really closely with our emergency response teams, I've seen time and again how those flexible dollars have been able to be rapidly put into play at a moment
Exactly.
when there's an emergency and institutional funding isn't available yet.
Yeah, that's right.
Which actually that actually makes me think that we could return really briefly to a subject that you mentioned earlier, which is climate change. We are seeing more natural disasters, more extreme weather events, more challenges as a result of the climate crisis. Could you talk a little bit about where you see kind of Mercy Corps' role in addressing that?
So yes, and we have been addressing it. I will say about even it might have been even as far as a decade ago, when I was working with smallholder farmers in Africa, we were seeing that people were noticing that the timing of their harvest was different, or they weren't getting as much rainfall. They were on the front lines of looking at what climate change was doing to them. And at that time, when I was at the Gates Foundation, we were investing in technology technologies to address this, right? Like we knew, okay, people need crops with like shorter times for this, or more drought resistant, or more water, or more water tolerant in the cases of flood. So we've been seeing this for a while, and we've been addressing it and working with people on more climate and weather data and better tools in the agriculture space. In our humanitarian work, we've been seeing it in terms of the storms and the displacements of people that are due. And so we've been addressing those. So we also, so as I mentioned, we were continuing to do that on the food side. Energy, and looking at off-grid energy or alternative sources of energy, or doing the last mile energy is something that we've definitely been working on as well, because increasingly populations just can't survive and take care of themselves without that. And we're going deeper to understand what other gaps there may be, and what other ways we can serve as we help people mitigate the impacts. We're also looking at our own carbon footprints, and looking at ways that we as Mercy Corps are good stewards of the planet and resources as well.
It's been exciting to see the progress in greening our own facilities, and seeing team members share photos of like, here's the green roof that we designed.
Yeah.
And I also really appreciate you calling out how long Mercy Corps has been invested in this work. I think that it hasn't been called climate change response.
Yes, exactly.
but all the work that we've been doing to make communities more resilient, to give them more options when it comes to food choices, or when it comes to employment choices, are fit for purpose to address those challenges.
Yes.
The solar hospital that we supported in Afghanistan, that was designed to make that hospital sort of conflict resilient, has also made it climate resilient.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Jada, some questions have come through about the US government. We have a new administration. Would you be able to talk a little bit about any conversations that you've had with Congress or government officials? Do you have a sense of what the administration has in mind in terms of development goals, particularly with such a large, global pandemic crisis in front of us? There's a lot of need, and just I think it'd be great to hear what conversations you've had and what you're seeing.
Yeah, so of course we're nonpartisan, so we strive to work with every administration. We've been very fortunate and happy about the contacts that we've been able to have with government since President Biden took over. Samantha Power, who is the head of USAID, the day that she was nominated, she called me directly on my cell phone. I was like, "Who's that 617 number?" And to talk about the work we do and what our priorities were. I also had the opportunity to testify at a House Foreign Affairs Committee session on the impacts of COVID going forward. What we see with this administration is a laser focus on COVID and its impacts around the world, and a focus on equality as well, and inequality and more inclusion in the space. And so a few things that we have been talking about and really pushing for. We have a wonderful program that we started with giving paid internships to students from historically Black colleges and universities and Hispanic serving institutions. The lawmakers have loved hearing about that, because one of the things that they're doing is trying to diversify, make the Foreign Service Corps, State Department and aid look more representative of the American people. And so, and organizations like ours can be feeder programs for people into those industries to expand awareness. Our biggest focus right now is, and the Biden administration has increased development funding. Obviously, there's a lot of COVID funding. The COVID supplemental that we just had was a start, but it still was like, less than 1% of that total is going overseas. And so we've really been emphasizing to people that COVID, fighting COVID and dealing with the crises that the world sees now is about a lot more than putting needles in arms. We have to really commit to long-term development funding to reverse the losses that we've had in hunger efforts to help people displaced, help displaces. In certain regions, we're seeing COVID has provided an opening for like armed groups and resistance groups to attract youth, to provide services where government can't, to move into new territories. And so we're going to need to do some longer term work on peace building, on social cohesion, on hunger, on basic water availability, other things. And so we're really working with them to keep that long-term commitment and to increase the broader development envelope, because this has just had ripple effects that will continue to go on. And I think they're open and receptive. Obviously, there's a lot we have to do for the US as well. And so we've been and we've expanded our own work in the US because of that, because we know that there is still a lot of work to do, but I've been really, really pleased by the levels of cooperation and outreach from all of us. And to my chagrin, although I'm happy for their service, we've lost a few of our superstar staff to the Biden administration as well. So it's a little bit challenging for us, but our country needs them, and I'm thrilled that expertise that they've developed with us is going to be so useful.
I think that I've already heard about some meetings on Palestine and other issues of people who are former Mercy Corps staffers who are now in the administration. So it's at least nice to know that someone's going to pick up the phone when you call, right?
It's fulfilling, and we had those same contacts in the Trump administration. I just think now we have people who are just much more eager to talk about it and to really do a lot more here, and are encouraged to be doing so.
I think that it's been remarkable as a U.S. citizen to see the consistency with which Congress, from a bipartisan basis, supports international aid.
Yeah,
it's a true U.S. value.
So one of my, when I testified on the Hill, some of my most thoughtful questions were from Republican members of Congress. And there was the congressman who said, like, you lie to Obama. And he had one of the most thoughtful, greatest questions. So it really is, I think people I am comforted by the fact that there has always been a bipartisan consensus around foreign aid and foreign assistance, because of recognition that it benefits us in a lot of ways, and that these are our future trading partners. There's the humanitarian the reasons for wanting it, but there's a host of economic and other diplomacy reasons for wanting that as well. And I think that's been eroded a bit, but I've been pleasantly surprised at how strong that still remains.
You actually mentioned a little bit earlier in our conversation, both this passion for how business and development can work hand in hand. And also you mentioned Mercy Corps Ventures, which is a pretty unique initiative. It's out of the usual thing for NGOs. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about why you see the value in that kind of connection between for-profit and nonprofit partnerships, or the value in that kind of social impact investing?
Yeah, I think it's, if this is basic human instinct, right? People want to support themselves. They want their own choices, right? They don't want to have to take the food that you deliver to them. They want money to go buy the things that they want. And, parents want their children to be able to have livelihoods in their community and not move to the cities or migrate as soon as they get older to have a better life. And so it's really natural that we work with businesses to bring in, to create markets for people. One of our strengths is market development, which I love, but to create markets for people, to provide innovative products and services, to work alongside us, to understand what people in places we serve need and their consumer patterns. And Mercy Corps Social Ventures is really the next step in that. I mentioned earlier, people turn to local markets when they need. And we need businesses and entrepreneurs to be serving lower income or populations that are difficult to serve or that are going through hardship. So one of the things that Mercy Corps Ventures is doing is we do have a venture capital fund where we've been providing small grants to small businesses. And it could be like as much, as little as $500. for basic business training, sometimes to help them develop a new product. But creating those kinds of enterprises and supporting those kinds of entrepreneurs and helping to make that kind of service to lower income populations meaningful and profitable only helps all the ecosystems that we work in. And I think it's a big part of sustainable development.
Thank you, Jada. I'm trying to get through all of these questions. There's a lot. So I just want to reassure everybody who's on the call. I apologize. We're not going to get to everything. We're going to do our best to ask a few more of the questions that you've put forward. Someone from Mercy Corps from our team will be getting back to you. We're making notes and we will not let them go unanswered. So Jada, just wanting to close with a couple of questions about you personally. Kind of what's going on with your life when you're not at Mercy Corps? Yeah. Also, I have some inside information. While you are not in Portland right now, I understand you have some personal passion and connection to the Pacific Northwest. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I will. And there was one question I wanted to assure. So someone was asking, like, if I'm committed. I will be at Mercy Corps for as long as they will have me. I came into this thinking it would be like at least a decade, and I hope, or whatever makes sense. But I'm very, very committed to Mercy Corps for the long term. So what's interesting, one thing, my husband and I met when I lived in Seattle at the Gates Foundation, and my husband was born in Boring, Oregon, and was educated at George Fox and Western States Chiropractic College. He's a chiropractor, which is even a little bit more of a West Coast. Like, I didn't know, obviously there are chiropractors on the East Coast, but it just isn't. I had to ask, like, exactly what do you do again when we met? And so we still have his family right now is between Portland and Eastern Washington. In fact, last summer, or the 2 summers ago, when we could all vacation again, our family vacation was to Portland and the coast of Oregon. So a lot of great ties to the Pacific Northwest. And we've always had a desire to make sure our kids felt like that part of the world was home as well. So while I will be living in Washington, D.C. for this job, I will be in Portland in the Northwest often. My husband and I have 2 young children. We have 2 boys. They're 6 and 8 years old. Their names are Miles and Colson, and they are the delights of our lives. They're very precocious, and we really enjoyed being able to do that later in life. Before the pandemic, I was addicted to Orange Theory Fitness. And so, I'm vaccinated. We'll see. Like, I'll start to go back at some point when things are a little safer. But since having children, some of our personal passions, like traveling and stuff, have been cut down. But we're really adopting and leaning into their passions, which include robotics and lots of swimming, and we're really enjoying our time with family. And I have to say, another good part about us being at home is our teams have made a lot of great videos and other things, and I've been able to share those with my kids. So in some ways, they're learning a lot about the world and kind of seeing and understanding more of what I do, because we're all home, and that's been a real blessing in disguise for us as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Are there any we won't tell the teams, but any family favorites among the countries that they've virtually visited so far?
Well, the very first country virtual visit we had was with Nepal, and our staff in Nepal, it was great. They actually had their kids give the intro to Nepal, so explaining their flag or talking about their currency or their favorite foods. So it was awesome that my kids got to look at kids that they were their age or a little older, telling them about Nepal. So that was that was really sweet for them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think, just personally, I just am really inspired by the fact that a CEO can be a woman with young children. I think that is super inspiring, and
I try to be open about it, because I found, when I talk to, especially now in COVID, where people are struggling with kids at home and everything else, I found that it's better for me to be honest, about when, this child got sick, or if my child will pop up on the screen sometimes, because I think especially now COVID's taught us, like, we're all human, we all are making allowances, and we all have full lives that need to be embraced, and we can do even better quality work when we do so. So I hope to see more of that.
Thank you. Last question. What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right?
You will impress me
I
if
know.
you are reading anything that isn't a briefing.
I am.
Let me just say,
I
I've
know.
seen your briefing
I have
material.
2 or 3 books going, so I'm slogging through. I shouldn't say slogging through. I'm going through. I'm in the Obama biography. I'm a little bit late. I'm a little bit late on the Obama biography. So that is the main one that I'm reading right now.
And any other reading recommendations or personal heroes you want to throw out there for our viewers, our audience?
Yeah, no, during the pandemic, I started rereading some of the classics. And so I had this I grappled with Toni Morrison's Beloved again. So I think there's been, I reread Jane Eyre. There has been something nice about the pandemic in doing more reading and actually trying to write myself a little bit more, and just remembering some of the finer arts and muscles and skills that you don't get to exercise as much. So like I said, that's why I said I'm getting through this Obama biography, but I have had a great run on rereading classics, and it's just nice to think about history and the world and our future, and just to put things in perspective about how things evolve over time. And I feel like the classics are a good way for me to go back and forth between the past and think of the future.
Thank you for sharing that. We are getting to the close here now of the amount of time that we have to spend together. Thank you so much, Jada, for being here. Thank you to all of you on the call. We are so grateful to have you as supporters of Mercy Corps. And thank you for taking the time. We couldn't do this vital, life-saving, life-supporting work without supporters like you. And so just deeply appreciative of your partnership.
Yeah,
Final reminder.
Sorry. I just wanted to add, I wanted to thank all of you for coming here. Like you make our work possible, and we are eternally grateful, and we do not take that for granted, and we're very, very humbled by it. I also wanted to, we've all been affected by COVID, but we know not equally. So, there's still a lot of work to be done, and I hope you'll continue to work with us to get it done, and to help us continue to create better futures for a lot of people who need the support.
Thank you so much. Jada Doye McKenna, thank you, everyone. Have a great day, great evening, great morning.
Thank you. Thank
be
you.
Safe.
Yes, be safe and sane. Okay. Bye-bye.